Hello again, this is Jay Shepard from Arkansas State University. Today we'll be looking at some examples that will put our scale positions and note reading to a test. Before we get started, you're going to need to print off some staff paper so you can take note of these examples and write them down. You also may get some staff paper that has treble clef on one side and tablature below it, because you're going to want to notate these fingerings of these various passages in more than one way. So for instance, we may finger a passage in third position, then fifth position, and then sixth position, and see how they're all different, and decide which one that we want to keep and which ones are too hard or cumbersome and that we don't want to play. The first example is a nice little lick in B flat. It uses both the minor and major 7 as well as both major and minor third, so it sounds a little slippery. It's good to know this one in 3 positions. Take some time and a minute to write it down and try to notate it in third position. By that I mean try to keep your first finger around the 3rd fret as often as you can. Maybe even you can keep it as often as all but one of the notes. So try to keep your first finger in 3rd position, notate it, and come back and I'll show you my fingering. Okay, here's my fingering. I thought this was a good fingering because I kept my promise of staying in 3rd position with the exception of the 2nd note. I went ahead and played that one on 2nd fret because I didn't want to reach all the way to 7th fret on the D string and play it. Also, it stays in a pretty tight position, and it uses the same scale patterns that we learned in the previous 2 videos. If you haven't checked those out, be sure and look at those. Here's how the first example sounds in 3rd position. Once again. So as you can see, I'm playing that A in 3rd position and then doing a shift down to 3rd for the 4th note. And once I'm there, I stay there. Simple and easy. Uses exactly the same scale positions I showed you in the previous videos. Now take a moment and try to notate the same example but in 5th position. Take a few minutes and get a fingering, and I'll come back and show you mine. So I did the same lick in the 5th position. Notice the lowest fret I play is on the 5th fret. So I truly do stick to 5th position in this one. I play it like this. So yeah, I just play whatever finger falls on whatever fret naturally. 1 finger per fret from the 5th fret, so my first finger falls on the 5th fret, my 2nd finger falls on the 6th fret, my 3rd finger on the 7th, and my 4th finger on the 8th, and that fingering keeps pretty well over the course of this lick. Now do it one more time, but I want you to find the position in 6th position. So don't move any lower than 6th position if you can. Okay, here's my fingering. Notice I have indeed not moved any lower than the 6th fret, keeping my 6th position like I said I would. So I play it like this. Looks just like that 6th position major scale or bebop scale, or maybe the Mixolydian scale. And the bebop scale, once again, is just the Mixolydian and the major scale put on top of each other and combined, just as a refresher. Okay, example 2 features the Dorian mode particularly, and uses a little chromaticism between the 5th and the 6th of that mode. So let's find some fingerings for it. Take a minute and think about a good fingering for the lick in the 3rd position. So we want to keep all of our notes to where our first finger stays roughly around the 3rd fret. Okay, here's my fingering. I'll go ahead and play it for you. It's really logical because I get to play literally one finger per fret again, making it very logical in the layout for the left hand. Again. So there you go. There it is in third position. Okay, let's skip down to sixth position and see if we can't write out a lick. Take a little time and write the fingering out for this lick in the sixth position. Okay, here's my fingering for sixth position. It's kind of difficult because I have to play the 8th frets with my second finger, so I kind of bar those together and roll my finger. Be sure the notes are separated. And then I play 2, 3, and 4 up that little chromatic passage there. And then up to 1. Is that right? There it is. So yeah, same lick, just in a different position. I actually like the first position we tried on this lick a little better. It was a little more logical, didn't have any stretches, one finger per fret, couldn't get any easier than that. Okay, moving on to example number 3. We get a lick straight out of the bebop scale, and then we climb a F7 arpeggio, well it's F7 flat 9 arpeggio in measure 2. The F7 flat 9 is simply a F7 arpeggio going up with a flat 9 or a flat second an octave away from the root of the F7 chord there. It's got a really strong sound for a 5 chord, and it resolves to the 5th of the 1 chord, which is that F note right there. It's a very common jazz cliche to learn, and you'll be glad you learned it. First, take a moment and find a fingering for this lick in first position if you can. There's a couple ways around this, but I'm going to show you the one that I came up with. Okay, here's my fingering. I'm staying in third position, kind of. The first 3 notes are in third position. Then by that A on the third beat of the first bar, I've shifted down to second. And then I go back to third position for the last 3 notes in the first bar. So that all looks like this. And then the important part is on the second bar, you want to start that F on the second finger. And then play 1 finger per fret on that 7 flat 9 arpeggio. And then you shift up with the pinky to third position to finish it. So altogether you have 1, 2, 3, 4. And there it is. That's how I fingered it. Take a moment and try to finger this lick in, you guessed it, 5th position. Okay, here's my fingering for 5th position. Let's crawl through it real quickly. I'm able to stay in 5th position, I think, for the most part. I start with the 3rd finger on the 7th fret. So that is a really easy fingering, way better than the first one already. 1 finger per fret, super logical. Then the second bar, let's see what we get. Wow, so the whole thing is 1 finger per fret. A major improvement already from the first lick in 3rd position. Here's the whole thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, take a moment and notate that same lick in the 6th position. We'll see if it's any easier. I doubt it. Doesn't get much easier than 1 finger per fret, but we'll see. Okay, this is my example. I kind of goofed up, I think, now that I've played through it. The first, let's see, 4 notes are good, but that A flat there, instead of playing it on the 11th fret, I think if I were to do it again, I'd go ahead and play it on the 6th fret. And then just shift down there. And then I would be in 6th position there for the rest of the lick, pretty much. So this one is pretty good. It's about the same, I think, once you get under your fingers as the last one. If you don't do what I did and play that A flat on 11th fret, I think I'd play on the 6th fret on the D string in hindsight. Do you know what they say about that? Okay, this lick is kind of interesting, example number 4, because we're only going to play it in one position. This is a case to where the range of the lick is actually so low that we're forced to only play it in that low position, because that low G doesn't exist in 5th or 6th position. We're just going to have to stick to 3rd position for this one. Okay, since we just have one position, here it is. And this lick is in 3rd position now. Notice it's the only way you can really play this lick with any kind of fingering like we've done before in the past. It sounds like this. It's kind of a flexible 3rd pentatonic lick, really. It's like a B flat major pentatonic with an extra kind of flexible minor 3rd leaning up to that major 3rd a couple times in it. It's a real traditional type lick. Get it on your fingers. It's good. This would be a really good one to try to play up an octave, maybe. If you can play it up an octave, that'd be great. Like, something like that. See if you can find a fingering for that lick up an octave as well. Okay, here's example number 5. It kind of reminds me of a Santana lick, It's kind of got that Oye Como Va kind of where you play on the 1 chord for a bar, then you play on the 4 chord for a bar. Notice the first bar kind of outlines a B flat minor 7 arpeggio, the 1 chord, and like B flat Dorian. Then the second bar outlines like an E flat 7 chord. So check it out, it's a good lick. Let's find it in 3rd position first. We'll actually have it in 3rd, 5th, and 6th position this time. Okay, here in 3rd position, it's 1 finger per fret. The only really tricky part I find is getting that pinky down on the 6th fret for both of those notes. You have to roll it so you don't let both notes ring at the same time. That's the trickiest thing to work out, but it's an important thing to work out. Letting the notes ring all together can make your playing sound messy, especially when you play with wind instruments and only play one note at a time. You need to be able to play just one note, one sound at a time as well. That way you mix in really well. It sounds like this. There it is. I'll give you a second so you can find it in 5th position. Then I'll show you that. Okay, here it is in 5th position. In the first bar, notice I'm playing the 6th fret with my first finger. So I'm rolling it over to be sure that I don't let them, overlap. Now, as far as the first 3 notes, you think, well, you can just bar them all with your 3rd finger, maybe. No, when you get 3 in a row, it just gets almost too much to handle. You could roll them and make it clean, but man, it's so hard. What I do is I go ahead and shift down there with my 4th finger and play those 8 frets 3 in a row right there with 4, 3, and 2 like this. Kind of like you would an E flat major shape, Here's the whole lick. I think it's a little better fingering. And here we go in 6th position. This one is a little different. I've got the 8th fret bar, and I think I'm going to do the same thing if I can, but let's see what happens. Actually, let me show you what I did there. What I did when I got up to the 2nd bar, I went ahead and slid the 3rd finger down to the 8th fret. Then I used the 2nd finger on the G and the D string to kind of make a bar. So that was the way I've found to clean that one up the best. Alright, on to example 6. This is a bebop lick if I ever heard one. Kind of outlines 2 chords again. We have like a B flat 7 sounding chord, and then a E flat 7 chord or E flat 9 chord at the end. So it plays over, these two chords. And I'll give you a minute to write it out in third position. So come back and we'll see the fingering for third position. Okay, this one's pretty straightforward. The only thing that you need to watch out for is in that second bar. Once again, you have 3 6 frets in a row. What I did the first two with my pinky, and then I grabbed the 6 fret D flat right there with my third finger. So it looked like this all together slow. Yeah, once again, I'll show you the fingering a little better here. So we got. Okay, here it is in fifth position. This is an example of a fingering that I thought just didn't work out. As you can see, it's got that 3 6 frets in a row on 3 adjacent strings. You have to roll them all with your first finger. It's kind of risky. Maybe it makes the lick sound a little dirty. I don't know. Maybe you like it to sound a little dirtier. I don't know. See, I failed the first time I tried it. So that kind of fingering, that kind of lick, I'm just throwing it out to the trash and never playing it like that again. Okay, now think of one for sixth position and we'll see if it's improved at all. Okay, this one's pretty comfortable. It's not as good as the first one, but it's not too bad either. You've got this straight chromatic run from the get-go like you did on the first one. And then you have those two notes. Then I have to kind of go to 7. So this one really ended up in more like 8th position or 7th position by the time I got done with it. But if you use the logic of that 6th position major scale or Dorian scale or Mixolydian scale that you saw in the previous 2 videos, you would have probably arrived at this fingering too. But overall, I think the first fingering that we had was probably the safest one for this lick. Okay, this example 7 is kind of a lick you'd want to use to set up like the 4 chord, but like in a blues maybe. So you'd play this lick over the last 2 bars, or the 3rd and 4th bar of a blues, and then you would hear the next chord in the measure that we don't get to. But you have the leading tone there, the A flat that wants to lead down to the 3rd of the E flat, the G, so you can see where that's going. Take a minute and find a fingering in 5th position for this useful lick. Notice we don't want to look for one in 3rd position because the C doesn't really exist in 3rd position. So we're going to start with 5th position for this lick. Okay, here it is in 5th position. You could play this lick 1 finger per fret, but I like to make a little change in the 2nd bar, and it just feels a little better. I move it up to 6th position. So the first measure I do play all in 5th position. Oh, it's not right. There it is. So that's all in 5th position. But when I get to the 2nd bar, when I get to that D flat there, I play that with my first finger, and then that ends up landing my first finger back on that A flat to finish the lick. And you can put some nice vibrato on that. I kind of like that. Then, because it wants to resolve to for the next bar. So yeah, do that one like that. Try it 1 finger per fret, and notice how silly it feels. And then just make the adjustment. Move the first finger up to the D flat in that 2nd bar, and everything will flow a little smoother. Okay, here's an example of a fingering that may work out right now in 6th position, just as this lick exists. But when you think about what the lick is really doing and where it's going, it doesn't make as much sense as the first lick. The reason is because you're already kind of having to reach to get the last note. So you got So from 8th to 7th position, and then you have to reach back to 6, and then reach from 7 to 6 there for the last note, and you would want to resolve that note to G probably. So you've already reached, so having to reach and then shift down a fret, it's kind of not, it's really not idiomatic at all. I would stick that lick to the first position we looked at. Example 8 is sort of a tricky lick. It's tricky because it's got such a high range on top. It plays as high as a E flat, it looks like. So we're going to have to play it up in a pretty tall position, pretty high position. So think about that and try to find a good fingering. And there's multiple fingerings for this one, but I'll show you mine. Okay, here's my fingering. For the most part, it's tricky, but if you follow the fingering I'm about to show you and walk you through, it's actually a pretty doable thing. So the first lick, or the first part of the lick there, the first 4 notes, is just a major arpeggio. The first 5 notes is a major 7 arpeggio, or a dominant 7 arpeggio, excuse me. Then you have this leading tone to the G. I played that with 1 and 3. And then see the G flat there is 1, the G is 3. And then I'm set up to play this G flat 7, or this E flat 7 arpeggio with 2, 3, 1, and 4. And then I shift up to 4 and finish the lick with 4, 2, 4, 2. Nice kind of modern sound there. And there you go. It's a fancy little lick. Example 9 is one we're going to want to play in 3 different positions as well. So jot it down and find it in 3rd position first. Okay, here's what I have in 3rd position. I think it's pretty much 1 finger per fret, so here it goes. Nothing to it. There's a little roll with the first finger in the last bar between the B flat and the D, but you can do that. You've got that down by now. So up here in the next position, I actually ended playing more in like the 6th position and kind of floating back and forth between 5th and 6th. The first bar I got all in 6, and then the same with the next bar. So it's kind of like a B flat blues box position, you know, kind of all that stuff. And then on the 3rd bar I shift down to the 5th fret. And then right there between the 3rd bar and the 4th bar, I go ahead on that E natural, going to that F natural from the 3rd to the 4th bar there. I use my 1st finger and shift. So that takes me back to that kind of B flat position on the 6th fret. And it makes that shift to 6 to 5 a little easier at the end. So try it like that, all in 6th, except for really the 5th position part is in the 3rd bar. So up here more in a little higher position, it's still kind of 6, but instead of going down when I had an opportunity, I went ahead and went up. You'll see what I mean when I get to there. So the first bar, I play, so then, I'm sliding the 6th fret from the D flat back up to, or no I'm not, I'm playing that 1, 2, so, and then you just have this total blues pattern. But then right here, on that 3rd bar is where it changes. I move my 2nd finger up to the 8th fret and kind of reach. Then right there I slide from 6 to 7 on the 1st finger. So I can get all those notes going to the 4th bar there, all with 1, 2, 3, 4 all in a row there, so it's real comfortable. and then that puts the resolution of the lick on the low string and kind of gives it a quirky sound when you put that on the A string. One thing to learn from these three examples is how there may be not necessarily a easier or better fingering for a lick, but sometimes a lick just says a different thing to you on a different set of strings or in a different position. And that's important to listen to as well. You want to be really in touch with that kind of thing because that can affect your articulation and is a big part of that. Okay, here in example number 10, we have a kind of a major arpeggio 9 going up. It falls down to a 4 chord, so like E flat 7 in the second bar, E flat 9. And then we have these diminished arpeggios in the third bar, which is really more outlining like a 5-7 flat 9 chord, like F7 flat 9. And then we go back to our B flat home bass major 7 chord in the fourth bar. Then the last two beats in that fourth bar can have a nice little cadential period to the phrase. So let's learn it in 3 positions. Here is the third position. Okay, this one's pretty straightforward. Notice I'm kind of reaching for that A in the first bar there. Got my pinky on that note so I can get that nice fall to that G there. And then with that G, I'm playing a second finger, and then third on the E flat, and I keep that shape until I get to the 7th of that chord, that D flat. I play that with my pinky, and then I play the E flat and the F there at the end of the bar, that second bar, with my first and third finger, which leads right up to that G flat with my pinky. So all that sounds. And then I come down that arpeggio, 1 finger per fret. Now this moment is critical, that when you go down to the 3rd fret on the 4th bar, shift down with your second finger and play that F with your second finger. And you can stay in second position to get all 4 of those notes on that second, or on that beats 1 and 2 of that 4th bar. And then I shift down to 3rd position and play the last 4 notes of the lick. So put that one together. It's a nice little lick, maybe to end a tune with. 1, 4, 5, 1 with a little punctuation at the end. Okay, up here in 5th position, it's 1 finger per fret, almost. I'll show you the one note that's not. It's in the 3rd bar, the last 8th note there, that G flat. I just kind of reach up with my 4th finger and grab it, and then slide that 4th finger down to the first note in the 4th bar as well, that F. So that G flat and that F there play both with the pinky finger. And it sounds like this all together. Not a bad fingering. It feels a little stiff compared to the last one in my opinion, but it's still pretty good fingering. This one is another fine fingering for this lick, up in 6th position. It's pretty self-explanatory by now. You should be able to figure out what fingers I'm using. Here it goes. I think if I had to play all of them, in a speed contest, this one would probably take the cake. There's a lot of economy picking in here. If you don't know what economy picking is, you should look that up. It's a really good skill where you can just blaze things a lot faster than you ever could with just standard up and down alternate picking. So look up economy picking. Alright, I think you've had enough practice, so now for the big finish. I'm going to give you a 12 bar blues solo I improvised a little bit ago and went back and wrote it out and cleaned up a note here or there, and let's see if you can find a good fingering for it. and maybe you'll find one that you like better than the one I played it with when I came up with it. So we'll see how that works. Okay, so here's what I've got. Here's how it goes. If you want to, you can play along as I play it. I'll count it off. The chords for this 12-bar blues will be B flat for a bar, E flat for the second bar, B flat for the third bar. Then you have a little turnaround there in the second bar. You're going to play F minor 7, and then E7, leading down to the fourth or the fifth bar where you have E flat 9. The sixth bar is E diminished, going back to the sixth bar, which takes us back to B flat 7, followed by the next bar we get that G7 sharp 9. Then the bottom system there, we get the first bar we get 2, so we get C minor, and then the next bar I'm playing like a tritone sub of 5, so instead of F7 I'm playing like B13. And then the last two bars, of course, are the turnaround. You have 1, 6, so it's like a G7 sharp 9 sharp 5, then down to C minor 9, and then that same tritone sub off F, that B13, back down to. I'll write the changes out at the end when I play it all together, but here's the fingering first. 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, something like that. And notice the melody and the notes follow the chords really well with the guide tones of those chords. The thirds and the sevens are really important notes. All that good stuff. I'll count it off again, and this time I'll give you a diagram of the chords, and you can kind of play along with it. A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, cool. This time I'll play the changes and you play the head. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nothing to it. I hope you found this video valuable. It would be a good idea if you're still wanting more practice with reading. Always find violin music, anything in treble clef really. Saxophone music is great. Flute music is fine. Clarinet, even trumpet. All that stuff that you can just get your paws on. You want to read as much as you possibly can. The more you find good fingerings for music, the more that you'll discover that once you get good at it, you've kind of figured it all out. It just takes some getting used to and problem solving. Don't be discouraged if you're not the best sight reader on the guitar after you do it for 2 or 3 years even. I didn't really get good at reading, I don't know, sight reading really by just cold sight until I played classical guitar for 5 or 6 years and reading new pieces every single day. So it can take a while to develop that skill, but you'll never get there if you don't get started. So good luck.